Bullies tore young teachers' silk top. She fired their parents from her company. They didn't just tear her shirt. They tore through every ounce of confidence she had spent years rebuilding. In one cruel second, the fabric of her dignity unraveled in front of a classroom full of teenagers who laughed like wolves circling wounded prey. They didn't know her story. They didn't care. To them, she was a target, soft-spoken, modestly dressed, and an easy mark for their cruelty. But what they didn't realize was that the woman they tried to break wasn't just a teacher. She was a storm waiting to rise. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of those who rise when the world tries to crush them, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Stories like this deserve to be heard, and your support helps them reach the people who need them most. Her name was Ariba Malik. 27. Gentle, but unshakable in her core. She wasn't born into wealth or privilege. She was raised by a widowed mother who taught her that dignity was worn like a second skin, not displayed in brands or boasted with noise, but lived with grace. From an early age, Ariba had learned how to read silence, the silence of unpaid bills, of empty dinner plates filled with hope instead of food, of tears her mother hid in the kitchen when she thought Ariba was asleep. By 17, Ariba was already tutoring other kids to help her mother pay rent. By 21, she had graduated top of her class, juggling night jobs, online coding courses, and part-time work at a bookstore. She never complained. Never asked for pity. Instead, she dreamed, not just of survival, but of building something that mattered. Something that would carry her mother's name forward. While pursuing her master's degree in education, Ariba quietly launched a startup from her bedroom. An education tech platform to connect underprivileged kids to digital resources. It started small. A few sponsors. Some grants. A quiet following. But by 25, she had landed her first government contract. And by 26, her company had grown into a team of 50, with her as the CEO. Still, despite her growing success, her heart pulled her back to the classroom. She had never forgotten the teachers who gave her shelter in school when life outside was falling apart. She applied for a teaching position at an elite private school in the city, one she could have afforded to buy stock in by then. But she didn't want power in that space. She wanted to give. She wanted to reach students before the world hardened them. What she didn't realize was that the world had already made its mark, especially on the ones who had everything except humility. The first few months were difficult, but manageable. Whispers. Snide remarks. Subtle mockery about her simple clothes and her teacher's salary status. Some students respected her, especially the quiet ones, the overlooked ones. But a particular group of boys, led by the principal's son Bullied, began to test her limits with cruel pranks disguised as harmless jokes. They'd lock the classroom door as she walked down the hallway. They'd spread rumors about her being desperate because she didn't wear makeup or have expensive handbags. Once, she found her attendance register scribbled over with insults. Still, Ariba smiled. She rose above. She focused on the students who needed her, on the single mother's son who had trouble reading, the shy girl in the back row with burned scars who never raised her hand until Ariba called her brilliant in front of the class. Then came that morning. She had worn the silk top as a tribute. It had belonged to her late father, a custom piece he had bought for her mother before he passed. Her mother had stitched it into a blouse and gifted it to Ariba on the anniversary of his death. It was sky blue, the color of peace, the color her father used to say made her look like the sky itself, vast, calm, infinite. That morning, Ariba felt a rare kind of confidence, the kind that comes from feeling seen by those who loved you even after they're gone. But kindness has no armor against cruelty, and that day, cruelty came with teenage grins and designer sneakers. Bullied and his friends had planned it. While she was helping another student, one boy tripped and dropped his open ink bottle on her chair. Another laughed and tugged at her scarf as a joke. Then Waleed, with eyes filled with something darker than mischief, reached out and pulled hard on the back of her silk top, so hard the delicate fabric tore from shoulder to spine with a sharp, sickening sound. Gasps. Then laughter. Then phones pulled out to capture the moment. Her hand frantically reaching for her scarf, her face frozen in horror. She didn't speak. She couldn't. She walked out of that classroom, silk torn, chest heaving, her scarf pressed against the gaping tear on her back like a bandage against a wound deeper than skin. That was the last time she entered that school. But what those boys didn't know, what the principal didn't know, was that Ariba was not just their teacher. She was their employer. Two of the boys' fathers worked in her company's operations division. One boy's mother held a senior position in project development. Another parent was a regional team lead. They had no idea. Ariba had always used a different last name for her company profile. She had kept her CEO status completely separate from her teaching job, believing the two roles served different purposes. But that day, the roles collided. And so, did her silence. She returned to school the following Monday. This time in a navy blue pantsuit with her hair tied in a bun. Her scarf rested gently on her shoulder, not clenched in defense. She walked past the students who suddenly fell silent. Past the parents in the parking lot who now recognized her from the video that had somehow leaked. Past the teachers who avoided eye contact. She entered the principal's office and placed a sealed envelope on his desk. "I'm resigning, effective immediately," she said. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. The principal blinked, trying to fake concern. "Miss Ariba, what happened was unfortunate, but boys will be." She cut him off. This wasn't about boys being boys. This was about adults failing to be adults. She left the room. But not before placing 4 other envelopes with the receptionist. Later that evening, a board meeting was called at her company headquarters. One by one, she detailed the events. She showed them the footage. The board was stunned. Heartbroken. Furious. And united. Within 24 hours, termination letters were sent to the 4 employees, the parents of the boys who had bullied her. Not out of revenge. But because a culture of cruelty begins at home, and is often sustained by those who stay silent in the face of their children's darkness. In her letter to each parent, Ariba wrote, "Your child may be young enough to be taught. But as an adult, your responsibility was to model what it means to respect, to protect, and to raise a better world than the one you inherited. You failed in your duty, not only as parents, but as members of this company. Therefore, effective immediately, your services will no longer be required." The backlash was immediate. Social media exploded. The video gained millions of views. Some called her cold. Others called her a queen. But the vast majority, the teachers, the students, the single mothers, the quiet workers, the bullied children hiding in the corners of classrooms, stood with her. Parents emailed her in support. Survivors wrote messages like, "I never had the courage to do what you did. Thank you for standing up for all of us who were laughed at, humiliated, broken, and stayed silent." The most powerful message came from a girl named Zara, a student from her class. Ariba found her note inside her school bag days later. "Miss Ariba. I'm sorry I laughed. I only did it because I was afraid. Afraid of them. Afraid they'd target me next. But I watched how you walked out, not crying, not screaming. Just proud. And I realized. I want to be like you someday. I want to walk out of fear like it never owned me." And just like that, the shame Ariba had felt was transformed into something powerful. Not rage. Not vengeance. But clarity. She realized that sometimes, the ones who try to break you don't understand who they're messing with, not because you're loud, but because your silence carries more storms than their noise ever could. To every viewer watching this, if you've ever felt small in a room full of people who made you feel invisible, if you've ever been laughed at, underestimated, disrespected, and still chose grace over vengeance, please like, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. You are not weak. You are the quiet storm that changes everything. And please comment below. Tell us, have you ever experienced a moment that shattered you, but secretly became the reason you rose? Ariba Malik never returned to teaching. But she still teaches. Every time someone hears her story, they learn that dignity isn't something anyone can tear apart. Not even with laughter. Not even with silk.